What happens when border security, disaster aid, and detention oversight collide in one room? Lawmakers pressed Homeland Security on money, migrants, drones, missing children, and public safety. Let's watch the hearing.
The first one that really kept me up at night for 2 years and still does to a great extent is the children that were lost throughout this entire 4-year open border policy of the Biden administration. What can you give me an update on that? Where are we on the numbers? What have we found? Just give me some information on that.
This is probably one of the most disgusting and disturbing things that we've dealt with. I dealt with some trafficking, child trafficking when I first got into Congress in 2013. And I actually stepped away from it because at some point it just starts wearing on you, and it's time to just kind of pass the baton because you get really jaded over it. When we stepped in here, we had 450,000 kids missing. 450,000 kids that were given to sponsors that weren't vetted. No home checks. No one was going by to see if they're where they're supposed to be, not even knowing if they're in their same state, not even to see if the sponsor was who they were at all. We've recovered 147,000, and all of them didn't have to be recovered. I'm not saying all of them had recovered. Some of them were where they were supposed to be. They were with a family member, and they appeared to be doing okay. But we've had some horrific cases. There's one that's kind of been out in the media a little bit where there's a ring of several adults that were keeping kids in an underground bunker in a dungeon. And the most horrific things that I pray to God that you guys don't have to see because it permanently changes you, the stuff that these adults put kids as young as 2 to as old as 12 through, you can't make a horror story that bad. We've had some young ladies that we have rescued that reports, and these aren't young ladies, these are girls, being raped 600 to 700 times, being locked in a hotel room and having to service 15 to 20 men. These are girls. And I hate to use the word service, but I don't know what other you can use. They were being raped 15 to 20 times a day, day after day after day after day after day. They didn't get holidays off. They didn't get nights off. They didn't work 8 to 5. They didn't work, Monday through Friday. They were locked in the room and highly drugged, and one male at a time, disgusting individuals coming in and raping these individuals. It is our mission. We've stood up and standing up even a bigger task force within DHS to go and find all 450,000 kids. It is my biggest passion that I have. And it should have, let me explain this too. Almost used a bad word there. What frustrates me the most is that this was preventable. And no one can argue that. This was 100% preventable. And we have perpetrators that are doing the most horrific things to kids. And as a father to 6, and 3 beautiful girls, when you see this, there's evil in the world. There's evil in the world. And we fed it. The Biden administration fed it for 4 years and took the innocent that's in my little girls' eyes, the innocence that's in our kids' eyes, that we pray to God never has to deal with this, that innocent is permanently stolen. And we're trying to just restore some type of comfort to these young girls. But let me explain to you, young boys too. Unfortunately, we're seeing a rise of young boys being trafficked. And it just disturbs you.
Well, I go back to my point. Clearly, you're passionate about this, and I understand why. I'm dad of 6 as well, 3 boys, 3 girls. So I know exactly where you're coming from on that. And I can only imagine what you've actually seen. You can't unsee that. Obviously the biggest victims here are those kids and those little girls and even older girls being trafficked and being
Our punishments for these individuals isn't enough.
that's I want to keep talking about that and what the punishment will be and has been for those people and there's a lot more to discuss there. And you're right, it was completely preventable. And for 4 years, we screamed off the top of our lungs about this, and this was the leading issue to fight against, and still is. So thank you for your passion on
by the chippy discussion this morning, and the subject is important. I appreciate this opportunity to put some questions to our Secretary. Mr. Secretary, thank you for being with us. Saw you in Indianapolis not too terribly long ago when you came in with Senator Young. So congratulations on the new work. I want to use my time to focus on some practical issues that matter to my home state. The subjects are roadway safety, trade processing, and counter drone readiness. And so if I could start with roadway safety, Sheriff Rutherford spoke in this lane to some degree, but Indiana, like Texas and other states, specifically suffered 2 crashes recently involving individuals that were unlawfully present in the U.S. operating commercial vehicles. 5 Hoosiers were killed. These tragedies expose a weakness in our federal verification system. In both cases, the drivers were able to obtain or to maintain CDL's commercial driving privileges because the DHS SAVE system did not accurately reflect their immigration status. That's why I introduced the Verify Act. The purpose is pretty straightforward. It modernizes SAVE to make sure states have accurate, timely immigration information before issuing or renewing licenses to people that can plow an 80,000-pound rig up and down our highways. Hoosier families, like families across our country, deserve confidence that this federal system is working, that the information is timely, and that ineligible drivers are not allowed to get behind the wheel of these big rigs. Mr. Secretary, how will the Verify Act help ensure that states can quickly timely identify illegal aliens before licenses are issued or renewed? And if I may append to that, what additional steps is DHS taking to ensure that CDLs meet all federal requirements that are already in place, sir?
Well, Congressman, we work closely with Secretary Duffy with the Department of Transportation to do this. That obviously falls underneath his committee, and but we do find them on the road when we're enforcing 287G, and when we do, we report it to him. So when we're doing road enforcement, we work hand in hand with the Department of Transportation. When it actually comes to the license being sent out, we can investigate them if they're being done illegally. The standards that is set for federal, not state CDLs, but federal, so if you're crossing state lines or interstate versus intrastate, when that happens, we are constantly in communication with other agencies as well. So some of this stuff, especially if it's negligent, we can work closely with the FBI if we feel like it's organized crime, to which the sheriff referred to a while ago. When we're talking about unlawful CDLs that are issued for international or for intrastate, not just interstate, then we also work closely with the Department of Transportation. We go after the illegals that shouldn't ever have the documentations to begin with. So when we find the documentations, we work with that. And Congressman, can I ask you to do me a favor and let me respond to Ms. Underwood since she wouldn't, so I can point out some of the hypocrisy between the federal detention centers, but yet most Democrats don't pay attention to their own correctional facilities, because we see this quite common in our state. So just some facts here. Illinois has failed in 29 of their facilities to have adequate medical or dental care. That's from their own state health inspectors. Illinois employs 16 full-time physicians for 29 facilities across the state. We're 1 for 1. Every detention center has a doctor put on staff. Illinois has a quarter of their facilities that don't even have a medical director. 60% of their nursing positions are vacant right now. By the way, this is in the state of Illinois. They have 1 doctor per 1,875 detainees. We have 1 per 1,000. Plus, we have nurse anestheticists that offset much of it. Illinois' state correction facility doesn't. So I would suggest that maybe our Democrats should look at their own backyard and look at their actual constituent base. We have people in our detention centers that enter this country illegally, and we're trying to get them off our streets because one death at the hand of an illegal is 100% preventable. And they shouldn't be in this country if they didn't come here legally.
All right. Well, I was glad to offer you that time to respond to my colleague from Illinois and then back to Indiana. We have
Very good. You have 3 minutes on the Indiana project.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Secretary, Indianapolis is not only my home, but it's home to the second largest FedEx air hub. And the subject of foreign trade zones matters much to distribution-based economies such as that which we have in Indiana, the crossroads of America. Businesses in and around my district depend on the functioning of these foreign trade zones. They offer not just logistical convenience for Hoosier manufacturers and employers. They mean savings through duty restrictions, lower processing fees, reduced costs, helping companies compete. And we compete globally, doing value-added work here in the U.S. The foreign trade zone application process is handled by CBP, and there have been significant delays, in some cases 6 months to 12 months in those applications. I know CBP is operating under resource constraints, and I appreciate the work our officers are doing under difficult circumstances. The fiscal year 27 House mark includes important investments in CBP that may enable, modernization in the automated commercial environment improvements. What resources could CBP benefit from to ensure that companies in Indiana and beyond can take full advantage of these foreign trade zone programs quickly and efficiently?
Consistent funding is the most important thing we can have, which is what Reconciliation 2.0 does. It gives us 3 years of full funding, so we can't allow some of the radical that serves in our chambers to play games with our custom border protection. When we talk about having funding that's been shut down 4 times over the last fiscal year, the last time was 115 days, it makes it very difficult for us to deploy new technology, more techniques, and it's very hard to hire when you're shut down and no one's getting paid. It's very, very difficult. Having consistent funding, we have the men and women inside all DHS, but especially through CBP, that can do their job, and they're experts at it. We have new technology that we're constantly wanting to deploy. I will say, because of the Republicans in both chambers passing Reconciliation 2.0, which President Trump's initiative, we're going to be able to have new technology to keep these trade zones operate and keep our economy moving forward, which right now, because of President Trump, he constantly says it. We were a dead country. Now we're a thriving country. We're the hottest country in the world because people want to do business inside the United States, and we need to be effective and efficient on bringing products in and out of this country.
I appreciate the Secretary's commitment. Much of this shouldn't be ideological. We just got to take care of the
It creates
customer.
jobs. That's right.
Mr. Secretary, I appreciate your testimony and the time today. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
To my colleague from the Hoosier State, thank you for winning the time.
Again, on the oversight provisions that we've had, detention, all that we had. Look, right now we know, look, next year there might be a different chairman here, and we are certainly going to put it in the chairman's mark on this, but you voted on this, I assume, when you were in the House and the Senate, because we've had a lot of those provisions, standards in detentions, the protections that we talked about yesterday. We added under what I call the Trump 1 administration 6 protections: SpaceX, the Chapel, and all of those protections that we have down there in the Valley. They've been there since Trump 1. We negotiated with, under the Trump 1, the secretary that was there in your place, and we added those protections. But then when the reconciliation came in, some folks are saying, well, those dollars are outside Congress, so we're going to go ahead and do that. In the chairman's mark, the way I understand it, we did put language there in the chairman's mark saying that those areas will be protected. Texas has 1,200 miles of border, And we just want those 1 mile here, 1 mile here, 1 mile here be protected. And I'm hoping you can work with us dealing with those reconciliation dollars.
Thank you, Ranking Member. The reconciliation dollars and appropriation dollars are by statute two separate funding and has two separate regulations. Same thing with detention centers and reporting language. We know the difference, and honestly, it's kind of a quagmire because we have to deal with so many different statutories. It would be easy if we just had one. Yeah. And just move forward. I would prefer that because it'd be an easier way for us to report, but bureaucracy gets in its way. We understand that. The wall, my number one job is to protect the homeland. And I'm telling you, Ranking Member, I love my job. I love that President Trump gave me this opportunity. I wake up every single day and I get to protect my yard just like I protect your backyard, people in California, people in New York, people in Oklahoma. I look at it all the same. It's part of homeland. And we strive every single day. My deputy, Troy Egger, who is truly invaluable to me, we talk on a daily basis on the best way to deliver this. Rodney Scott, the head of CBP, we're meeting almost daily on the wall. Our thing that we're seeing with the wall is the cartels are always changing, and they're a threat. There's not 1 inch of Mexico's northern border that isn't covered by a plaza. Plaza is cartels, 9 cartels that control it. And they have plaza centers, they call it plazas, that they have plaza bosses, and they're always looking for vulnerabilities to push human trafficking and drug trafficking across our border. And they're getting very good at it. They're even using UAS now. We just discovered our first tunnel in years because our wall is being effective. We are pushing them into what we consider choke points. So the more walls we put, the more we can focus on trafficked areas. And we take a hard look at this. And there's members on this committee that has called me about it, and there's committee and other people throughout the House and the Senate that when you call, I answer the phone. If we got to go out there and take a look at specific areas, we will do that. I've been on helos, traveling those borders. We've been in vehicles traveling those borders to see where are the most sensitive areas, because we want to be cognitive of the surrounding areas, but we also got to take in first and foremost the safety of the homeland. And those are always something that we take in consideration when we're looking for any type of corridor.
Yes, sir. And I'm with you. I live there. I don't just go visit the border.
Yes, sir.
And I would love to have you go down to Laredo. And if you would allow me, we'll find a time to go visit.
Do it.
And Mexican food is pretty good down there.
I agree, but I just found out that queso is maybe like an Oklahoma thing, white queso.
Hey, we'll take any import from that. But I love to have you down there if you make the time, and we'll invite the chairman down there.
Sir, I'll do it. We can do it as a committee with the chair, however you want to do it. I'll absolutely do that.
Yeah, and look, and let me just talk about a couple things on the border. And again, I'm with you on security on the border. Problem is the river goes this way. This is a border wall. What happens is, imagine if you were in Oklahoma, had property here, and they would take all this away. The middle of the river is actually the boundary. We're not going to put a fence in the middle of the river. We're not going to put it at the riverbanks because they will get washed off. The thing is, this is the where they put the actual fence at. If you look at it, and I've taken planes just following down here with Michael McCall. This is the way the river is, and when you put a fence over here, you're just taking things away from property that's been there. Laredo, for example, was built in 1755, a little older than our country, and all we want is go down there, let's look at the best way to provide security down there. And that's all we're asking when you go down there, is just sit down with the folks there. We're patriots down there. We've been around for a long time. We live there. We just want you to come down and sit and spend a little bit of time with us there.
Ranking Member, actually, the deputy just got back from there yesterday. He spent a day and a half down there. The issue that we run into is the people look at the river as being the exact location of the border. It's not. The river is moved. And when we're talking about putting a barrier, we fought this in Trump 45 when we first started looking at surveying this. And and the question was, do we follow what we consider the natural barrier is the river, or what actually the lines were when we draw them, back 200 years ago? It was because of some of the court rulings, it came to that we have to look at where our actual border is, and that goes back to the Roosevelt line. So when we start looking at the Roosevelt line is where we try to put it at. And there's some circumstances where we can't always run the Roosevelt line, but where we can, we do. But that's where we try to run is our true border line.
Right. And we have fences down there in the valley, with the exceptions of those 6 exemptions that I talked about. There's our numbers from Border Patrol. Even with the fences, look at the heat maps. You still have people addressing. And if you ask any Border Patrol chief, I haven't asked this Border Patrol, but I've asked Border Patrol chiefs from Bush 1 all the way up to except for this current one. And I've asked them, how long does a border fence slow down somebody? And they have always said from a few seconds to a few minutes. So again, I'm for border security. I got about 20 seconds left because I'm going to make sure we follow this. But look, we can talk about it. I'm for border security. You're for borders. All I ask you is go down there. I understand Tom Holman was down there also in Laredo. Appreciate notifications before instead of hearing that from my mayor and other folks. But I ask you to go down there and spend a little bit of time with our communities.
We will do that, and we are addressing the primary wall. That's why we're putting in the wall system now, which is called the secondary wall too, because the cartels have been exposing it. We're putting in smart fences, which allows us to respond when they're tampering with the wall. The second wall, which is the primary wall, which will still be within our footprint, we're constructing it sometimes at the same time. Partly, we're going to have to come back and do it, but we'll all have it done before President Trump is out of office. We'll have the complete primary and secondary wall done. And that gives us time when they cut the fence, we can react because they're doing it in very rural areas. We can react before they can get past the secondary wall. And we know how many we're dealing with. Plus, we're using UAS now to put up with heat sensors to be able to track them and see what we're dealing with. So you're absolutely correct. The cartels have got really good, but that's what they do. They're criminals. And so every time you do something, they try to figure out a way to get around it. And we're going to defeat them at every turn.
My time is up. Thank you. By the way, according to FBI statistics, Laredo's the safest city in Texas. Thank you. Look forward to seeing you in Laredo.
Cuellar for real made in his opening statement, which comes down to this basic point. We've thrown a heck of a lot of money at Homeland Security in the last few years. We started with a base budget for Homeland Security of $62 billion in FY 2025. Of course, for FY 2026, we had the exclusion of ICE and CBP at $48 billion, back to $65 billion in FY 27 as passed out by this committee over the objections of all Democrats. But most directly, $191 billion in reconciliation in 25 and another 70 in 26. For a total of $261 billion. Now, granted, that's spread out over a number of years. But the committee's concern, and I think this goes to all members of the committee, is really a failure to itemize where that reconciliation money is actually going. It's been very, very slow in all departments for us to get information on the reconciliation money. And so I'm just wanting to understand what information the department has provided to the committees of jurisdiction, both funding and authorization, on your actual utilization of the reconciliation monies. And, I asked that in the 2 tranches. First of all, the 191 billion. Do we have the information from you we need now to know where you're spending that money? And then the 70 billion as well, which is more recent, granted, but we still need that information to make budget decisions.
Congressman, thank you for the question. And I just got to say, honestly, you guys have a beautiful state. I hate what you guys have been through since I've been in office. You guys have had 2 trillion gallons of water dumped on your beautiful state. Earthquakes and volcanoes. And Governor Green and I have worked very closely together. I seriously think I talk to him more than I do my own governor of the state of Oklahoma. There's not a week that goes by we're not visiting We've done pretty good about getting you funding there. It's interesting because through reconciliation, we're required by statute on what we report and what we don't report. Because we had to go through reconciliation to get funded, and it shouldn't have been that way. I would have loved to have done it through regular order because we had some substantive changes that was in the first bill that we brought up, but because we started playing politics with it, and I'm sure that wasn't you, but there was politics that's played with it because there's no excuse for not funding ICE and CBP. There's reconciliation issues that on the statute side of it, but we are trying to be as transparent with all the dollars that we spend. There's nothing that we don't want to share. We have nothing to hide. I tell all of our employees, we do stuff here. I don't do anything under the table. I understand that we were way behind on reporting from the previous secretary. We're trying to catch up on all the letters that was sent. We're trying to catch up on all the requests that was sent and some of the stuff that we're behind. We're not there yet, but I can tell you, I'll let the deputy talk about this. His office and the undersecretary's office, once it gets filled, works on this nonstop.
So the short answer is we, especially for the 191 billion, we have all the detail that's required. I did see letters coming through from this committee asking for this information. Of the 191, there's approximately 124 billion that we've actually apportioned, worked with OMB going through, and we've committed or obligated about 66 billion at this point.
And has that information been made available to us?
It will be made available. There's the reporting process that and like the secretary said, with the delay, we've had a lot of challenges with the back office with all the delays with the shutdowns, but we'll be getting everything updated. And then within the department, we absolutely track this very carefully.
Okay, and what about the 70 billion? Is that not due to us yet?
The 70 billion obviously passed fairly recently. All the department or the two areas, ICE and CBP, are putting together their spend plans, working with OMB to get the apportionments. And once the apportionments are in place, we'll start working through the obligations that'll follow the same path that we're going through right now with the 190 billion.
Okay. One of the concerns with the 70 billion as we went through that debate was that 5 billion of that 70 billion was allocated to the Secretary's office unspecified. First of all, do you agree with that? I just want to make sure we're on the same page. And second, what exactly are the plans for the Secretary to have 5 billion to spend at his discretion?
Yeah, the 5 billion is very similar to what you saw in the 190 billion OSAM fund that we had out there for the Secretary. And it's really kind of broken up into kind of two categories between the judicial or stuff that's done non-immigration and the 2.5 that would be potentially stuff that we could do to augment stuff. And the example that I would say the Secretary's been very focused on is counter UAS. So this type of money outside of a program of record allows the Secretary the flexibility to whether, where we're only spending $40 to $60 million a year, he can go all in, set up a task force and put in, up to probably 500 to 600 million at his discretion.
And we're also doing 3.5 billion is going to ice cutters. We had one ice cutter. President Trump's initiative is get us up to actually get to 50, but we're doing 11. We're buying some of that through Section 90007, which is the Secretary's fund, replenishing some of it with the $5 billion out of this reconciliation 2.0. This is also the way we're able to keep CBP and ICE operating during the 115-day shutdown. And then the counter UAS, we're vulnerable, extremely vulnerable, and it was it was made more apparent during our preparation for FIFA. So for the first time in history, we have all 11 stadiums covered with counter UAS. That's never happened before. In fact, none of these stadiums even had counter UAS. So this funding, because there's no line item for counter UAS in our budget, we were able to use this funding, which is a lot because we got to work with local partners and we also got to reimburse certain agencies too. So this gives us the ability to flex when we need to because of the new threats that are facing the homeland every single day that isn't always line item.
Okay, thank you. I think we all want the information. Questions for rhetorical purposes. Why does the Coast Guard need $2 billion more in the supplemental, which was submitted yesterday, number one? Will you reverse course on the cuts to CISA, which I think are penny wise and pound foolish? how much do you actually, I'm going to stop right there because I'm over time. I don't want to get in trouble.
Can I answer those real quick? I can do it real quick. So
No, Mr. Secretary, I can make it easy for you. I am going to yield Mr. King, who some know as Mr. Case, 2 minutes of my questioning time for you to answer those two questions.
well, it won't take me 2 minutes. So the $2 billion supplement fund that we sent back, we've had a tremendous amount of more expense because of the threats that are facing us with the actions in Iran. Plus the narco boats that we're having in, those weren't there. The president has put a tremendous amount of emphasis on putting new cutters on the water and utilizing the Coast Guard in a way that hasn't been used before. That comes with manning power too. And so the $2 billion to stand up to meet the force needs of us moving forward, and also on some reimbursement costs that we incurred during the shutdown. So while we're shut down, DOW was paying our fuel bill. Because we still had missions. Our international waters, and it wasn't, they weren't patrolling themselves. And since we didn't have the funding, we had to do it. And so that's reimbursing also to the DOW and for our mission sets.
And you have
Oh,
about,
and counter-UAS, sorry. Counter-UAS, yes, or CISA, I mean. CISA, absolutely. Listen, CISA has very unique authorities, and we have adversaries that are attacking not just our government, but attacking our businesses every single day. And the one that has that authority to do it is CISA. It probably got a bad rap because it wasn't utilizing its authority. It was politicized for a little bit. We're hiring the best people. We're bringing in a director for CISA. We want to stand it up and be not just average. We want to be the go person for cybersecurity in the nation. That's our focus. That means we're going to hire back up. We are about half staffed what we need to be. Do we need to hire everybody back? No. Do we need to hire about 600 people back? Yes, but I don't want to put bodies in position. I want to put the talented individuals that know what they're doing and have partnerships with our state and local officials.
thank you. Thank you very much for your forbearance, Mr. Chair.
Let me just follow up with what Ms. Hinson was saying. You do return even my calls and my texts. Sometimes it's late in the night, but I appreciate the response. I really do. I wanted to start by acknowledging some of the incredible work and, can I say, commitment by ICE to crack down and deport convicted illegal criminals. We had a case last month at ICE Seattle arrested a man that had a lengthy criminal history, including 2 felony convictions of raping a child, and it was awaiting deportation. And I just wanted to bring that up and say thank you. That's the efforts that are keeping our communities safe. First thing I want to talk about is the visa and H-2A petitions. At the end of April 2026, USCIS reported a net backlog of all USCIS cases at 7.23 million cases. An increase of nearly 70% from the beginning of the administration before your time, with the expectation that additional vetting requirements may even further strain those processing times. Could you describe how DHS is allocating personnel and resources to address this backlog and ensure timely adjudication of applications?
Yeah, unfortunately, we're having to go back through and re-vet a lot of people that was given asylum or given visas underneath the previous administration because they didn't do any checks. So we're building systems in right now to be able to do that through an automated system. We're bringing up the first one in 30 days. That's going to be specifically for the backlog of DACA, which DACA doesn't give you, status in the United States. It just is a term that Congress never ratified, but we put in place, but it still allows you to apply for a work visa, but it doesn't give you status. That we're going to deploy the first one in 30 days, and then we think we'll be able to get caught up in a very fast time. But we're having to build the automated systems because it's just not possible for us to go through one by one. But because we're going through there and taking a deeper look at all this, we've been able to arrest over 1,900 known terrorists that were given status underneath the Biden administration inside the United States. Over 1,900. These aren't suspected terrorists. These aren't terrorist watch lists. These were terrorists that was just issued because there wasn't any really checks and balances put in place. And so it's real work that they're doing, but we are building a system to be faster at it. And the technology that we have, the private-public partnership we've been talking about a lot, is helping us get there.
Good. Good. So on a related note, I appreciate the agency's follow-up to a question that I actually submitted, if you remember, Mr. Chairman, when Director Edlow testified regarding the adjudication and processing time specifically for H-2A petitions. The response indicated that there was no backlog for H-2A petitions, which, thank you, that's a welcome update. However,
It's a 15-day turnaround. Once it gets cleared, it's 15 days.
well, what I was going to ask, the response also indicated that the processing times in 2026 so far are notably longer compared to previous years. So just looking for your commitment that you'll continue to support the agency's efforts to expedite these petitions. As you know, timing is critical for agriculture. And will your budget ensure that sufficient resources are dedicated in order to carry out those responsibilities?
So I had a briefing on this 2 days ago.
Yeah.
And our turnaround on those visas are 2 days or 15 days, especially if they're known. A lot of these agriculture workers are known. They come back and forth. We see them every time. We can repeat them, and the largest percentage of those are. We're also looking at the dairy issue.
Right. Thank you for that.
And because it's not seasonal. So we think we got a path forward to fix that issue finally. We've asked Congress for clarification, but anytime you ask Congress for, I'm not beating up on you guys. I sat there too. So I'm just saying anytime we ask Congress for anything to try to do with immigration, it gets just politicized. So, but we think underneath statute, there's a way for us to move this and make it work. We're still going through it. We're still getting legal opinion on it. We don't want to do anything but I don't think you guys would really get upset if we did it, but I want to make sure we're legally able to do it. But as of 2 days ago, we're 15 days on turnaround on those. Once they're finally submitted correctly, we have a large percentage of them that are not entered correctly. And what I've asked CIS to do, USCIS, is to say, why can't we move this to a system that you can't submit the paperwork until it is filled out correctly? You know, if you do DocuSign or you do any of this stuff online, what you've got to go and accept, they won't let you move forward. The technology is there. We just have to adapt it in a way to be able to make it interface friendly with the public, with the general public, to be able to make it more efficient. So we're doing a test program on this. We're actually trying to build an app. This is new this week. I briefed the president about it this week, and the president loved the idea. We're also, because some of these visas that we work with, these programs go through Commerce. Howard Lutnick and ourselves, our teams are working together to try. I don't know how long it'll take. It'll take a little bit to build it. That way, the misinformation won't be as prevalent, and we can get to it faster. Because every one we delay affects our economy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we want the people trying to get here to do it, to do it the right way, to work, to actually be able to come to the country and work.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Let me turn the page to CISA for a second. It was already referenced, the longest shutdown in history. When Director Anderson testified before this committee, I asked him about CISA's ability to identify, to mitigate, address the cyber threats from adversaries like Iran, like China, I'm talking about critical infrastructure. Unsurprisingly, his answer was that CISA was limited in their capacity, and it was clear that a handicapped CISA meant higher risk of leaving our critical sectors, from our water systems to our hospitals, energy grids, you name it, dams, the agricultural sector. They're all vulnerable to cyber threats. So does the budget sufficiently provide personnel and resources that are going to be necessary to ensure that CISA is equipped, that they can tackle the potential cyber attacks from those adversaries that target those critical sectors of our economy? I
do believe, as a secretary, I say, no, we always need more money. Truth is, we actually have the resources we need. We need the people, and we need the expertise. I think we even have the ability underneath statute to do it. What's happened over the years, like any great government agency, it creates its own bureaucracy. You guys give us authority, then we write the rules. And the rules sometimes handicap ourselves. So we're going back and looking at is what was the actual intent of Congress, and then how many layers of rules have we put on ourselves to say no? Because too often government agencies, it's easy to say no. We're changing that way at DHS. We go to yes. We lean to yes. That's our new policy. We're there to figure out how to make it happen, not to find the easy way out. And some of that is our own rulemaking. So I feel like right now, Congressman, we have the resources financially, and we have the authority, I believe. If that changes, I'll come back to you. But we don't have the personnel. And so we've got to get my director in place that the president's already met with. We got to get him in place, get him down the road, put him in place, let him hire his people, and get it built. Truthfully, once he's in place, it's going to take me probably 12 months to build this back. It may be longer when he gets in there and lets me know, but I believe we can make significant strides in the first 3 months. But to actually be where we need to be, I feel it'll take a full year.
Well, let us help you wherever we can there.
Yes, thank you.
Appreciate you being here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, it's great to see you, particularly in this position as a former law enforcement officer myself. It's great to have somebody in there that understands law and order. We wouldn't need the wall, like he said, if every administration would enforce the current law as it is, but they won't. And so we need this wall. The first one is an impediment. The second one gives you time to get there, and great plan. I want to speak a little bit about organized retail crime and cargo theft, because they are no longer isolated property crimes. They are sophisticated, they are interstate, and they are often transnational criminal enterprises that threaten the integrity of the U.S. supply chain. They impose higher costs on consumers and generate illicit proceeds that support these cartels who are running these things and other criminal enterprises. I would also mention that these are the non-domiciled CDL drivers that are killing our American public out on our roadways because they don't know how to drive. Last month, the House overwhelmingly passed the Combating Organized Retail Crime Act, CORCA. This committee also passed the FY27 Homeland Security Appropriations Bill, which we included language in that bill for the $4 million to establish the Organized Retail and Supply Chain Crime Center that would be created through CORCA. So we're funding it in advance, hoping that the Senate will do the right thing. We have to start fighting these cartels who are absolutely taking over our trucking industry. First, I'd like to know, would you agree that combating cargo theft and this organized crime is imperative to our national security? And from a Homeland Security perspective, how important is it that Congress provides DHS with the tools and statutory direction that CORCA gives to treat organized retail crime and supply chain crime truly as a national security threat?
Thank you, Sheriff, or Congressman, for the, I've called you Sheriff for so long.
Please.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
Sheriff, thank you for that question. It is something that we're seeing organized crime expanding into. Unfortunately, underneath the Biden administration, they had 4 years to build a network because there was just no enforcement on this. The Trump administration has had a zero policy, and we're kicking all the networks. We're going from the cities on down to the borders. That's part of the president's enforcement and going by city because they do have networks there. And what we're seeing is cartels and other organizations that are, because of the drugs that we are having a strong effect on, because of the human trafficking that we have taken away from the borders, from the ability to traffic humans and across, they're moving more towards the retail theft. There's been a kind of hands-off policy. We're seeing this really bad in sanctuary cities. We're seeing as CDLs drivers that they're not required to have the same amount of training or hours in a truck or months or years of service. They can just simply switch their DOT number out and move right on. and we're seeing that they're directly tied to it, and we're seeing CDLs come out where it just simply says no name. Oklahoma, I would say we're one of the strongest to enforce this, but the more cooperation we have with the 287G program, we can combat this, because ICE, even though people consider them just rounding up illegals, ICE is Immigration Custom Enforcement. HSI, who falls underneath ICE, is also part of that. They combat human trafficking, retail theft all the time. For Congress to convey their interest in this, we have the authorities already to do it, but to convey it helps us get more cooperation from sanctuary states and sanctuary cities saying that this is different. Because when you have these sanctuary governors and sanctuary mayors that go out and say you cannot cooperate at all with ICE, right, what they're doing is at the same time saying you can't cooperate not just with immigration, but with other investigations that ICE does, which is much more than that. And so it really handcuffs us from being able to do it. So what we're doing is we're hitting all the red states, we're hitting the blue states that will cooperate with us, but we're just pushing them then into these high sanctuary cities, which is why you're seeing retail leave on a constant basis, which is not good for the economy. It's not good for anybody to do that. So the more you guys can help us and convey your interest, especially, this should be a bipartisan issue. This be something that no one is looking at this as a blue or red issue. This is across the state, because when we lose a pharmacy, or you lose a grocery store, or you lose a mom and pop shop, or you lose a jewelry store because they're getting robbed to death, literally, and no one's enforcing it, that's not good for anybody. That affects all your all's constituents. I almost said all of ours, but I guess they're all your guys' constituents now. And we just simply want to enforce laws. What we don't do at DHS is pick and choose which law to enforce. We enforce the laws that Congress passed.
Right, and I think it's important that DHS and DOT, that we come together on this, because part of the enforcement, I can tell you, if you want to end this, let's start seizing some of those trucks instead of giving passing the cargo on, and when we stop these
we have the
drivers
authority
who are violating cabotage, let's start some seizures and forfeitures on these vehicles, and that'll stop.
We actually have that authority through the 287G program, and when I go back to Oklahoma, even though we have 4.3 million people in the state, we have more arrests under the 287G program, and we've revoked and confiscated more illegal CDL drivers than any other state. The only one that has more arrests is Florida. Their population is quite different. Right. Oklahoma has stopped, revoked license, and arrested and confiscated vehicles more than any other state, because we have complete cooperation with the 287G program.
I'm glad you brought up 287G, because that leads right into my next issue. Because when I was sheriff, I started a 287G program within my jail.
I didn't know it was that old.
Oh yeah.
I'm kidding, sir.
Thank you. But here's the thing. We've made significant investments in the program, and I want to say thank you. You all have done so much in expanding the 287G program across the country. I think there's now over 2,000 state and local agencies involved in the program. That's phenomenal. So can you talk a little bit about that and how important that is? I can tell you the former ICE chief who retired told me in the hearing, it's the best thing since sliced bread. And we can't get these darn sanctuary cities and states to participate in this program. And I like your idea, Mr. Secretary. We need to find a way to hold them accountable.
Yeah, so the 287G has been super successful for us. One of the things that I want to kind of tie back to, because again, that's allowing us to have the partnerships with all the sheriff organizations. The Secretary has been very focused on recovering UACs. Children that made it across the border, 450,000. Through the Secretary's leadership and working with the White House, we've been able to use the 287G program. We've been using Big Beautiful Bill money to actually work and fund that, basically helping the Sheriff's Department and going out and working with us to help us locate these kids. We've located over about, 140? Yeah.
147,000.
147,000. And again, it really thanks to you guys funding the Big Beautiful Bill, being able to give us the money. And really with the partnerships with the sheriffs, this also helps build your local communities. This money goes directly to them. That helps them build up their facilities, their capital, their cars, all of that stuff. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Chairman, I see my time is up, and
Secretaries, I'm from Indianapolis. That's part of my district. We run some big events, much as we were talking about with the threat of drones, counter UAS on FIFA. We've got the Indy 500. We have the men's Final Four. We had the Pacers playoffs. Secretary Edgar, as a mayor, you realize that these threats to public safety arising from the evolution of drones, which are tools as well in the profession, are extraordinary. And DHS is in the lead at managing this threat and these tools. The fiscal year 27 House mark included dedicated counter-UAS funding. And last year's NDAA authorized trained state and local law enforcement to detect, track, and mitigate, take down threatened drones. We can strengthen our ability to protect major events and critical infrastructure. And let's not lose sight of that, but only if local law enforcement has the training, the tools, and the coordination to work with federal. Mr. Secretary or secretaries, give us a view into what the department is doing on this end to coordinate training with state and local law enforcement to manage the challenges that are upon us now that drones present.
So Congress is going to have to lean on this a little bit. Bringing down a drone for an enthusiast is easy now. We can do it. We do it every day. We do it. And when you got an enthusiast that flies a drone over FIFA, I think we brought down over 60 drones to date. During F1, we brought down 8. During Augusta, we brought down 12. Those are enthusiasts. The issue that we have is the ones that have it on fiber. And so when they attach it to fiber and they're running in, the only way for us to be able to bring them down is to be kinetic. And that is a whole nother area. You got to deal with FAA at that time. You got to deal with local authorities at that time because there's going to be a possible collateral damage. When people say, well, shoot a laser at it. No, that's fine, but a laser doesn't stop within the horizon to which the FAA will give us. So like, for instance, around FIFA, you have 3,000 vertical and you have 3,000 or 3 miles out. So around FanFest, we have 1,000 feet up, we have a mile out. It creates challenges for us to do it. And the only technology we have right now to be fully kinetic is with DOW. We're exploring that, but Congress is going to have to look at this as a whole. I don't know if you know this or not, which is going to be changed, but there wasn't one single NFL stadium last year during all the games that had counter UAS on it. That was my wife running through. Everything else was silent, I promise. But technically, I thought I'd be done by now. Yeah, I did too. But I do think Congress needs to take a hard look at this for us because we're going to have authorities beyond just what we currently have because this is a threat that's changing every single day, and I really could sit and use some help. We're meeting with the FBI yesterday. We had a great meeting with Kash Patel. Kash Patel already has a center that is training local law enforcement. And he doesn't have enough space. We have more people asking to get into the school than he has a space to do it. We are looking for ways to partner with him to be able to put DHS funding directly to that. And is it through FEMA grants? Is it through HSI? Is it through ICE? Is it through CBP? And then also, yesterday, Troy and I started talking about setting up a joint task force with inside DHS. Because we have 22 components, and out of those 22 components, I have 8 that have their own counter UAS measures. And for example, out of the 11 football stadiums we have, I have CBP covering 5, FBI covering 3, the Coast Guard is covering 1, and FBS, or Coast Guard's covering 2, FBS is covering 1. I think my math is correct on that. And all of them have different measures. And so this is, Congressman, what you're bringing up is a true challenge, and that threat is changing every day that without question, Congress is going to have to help us get the authority to do what we need to do on this.
I appreciate the extra time. This is an important issue and an
very important.
immediate challenge for both the department and this Congress.
Hey, can I just add one point? And this is for you, Mr. Carey. When I was down at RGV, just to give you an idea of the scale at the border, same problem. Just from the beginning of this fiscal year till yesterday, they had 11,000 drones basically registered at the border. I mean, Secretary is talking about offensive, drones, being able to kind of do something against them. So that is something we definitely are looking at. But I mean, even you just take the threat to the border, and we break up the drone process into the maritime, the border, special events, et cetera. And each one of those operating principles, we need to have a better strategy that's funded, and we have the authorities.
Thank you.
Done. The mission is not complete. But I want to congratulate you, but I also want to get your thoughts as at this point, kind of give us an update on where we are 2 weeks into the FIFA World Cup.
Thank you so much, Congressman. First, real quick on the disaster, the president's well aware of Mississippi. Him and I, actually, he was texting me while the governor was texting me. Cindy Hyde-Smith was in the vehicle with him, and we were working together. I turned around and called the president. The president said, make sure they get the disaster relief or the disaster declaration over to me. We'll start working on it. We're waiting on preliminary numbers to come in that the governor knows about. When he sends us to us, he'll go straight to the president, get to the president's desk, and we'll put in. But they're still assessing the damage there, which was horrific. The discussing FIFA, thank you. DHS has done a phenomenal job, and keep in mind, we're shut down through the majority of this, trying to stand this up. We have 78 Super Bowls in 11 cities in 38 days. Plus, we're assisting 13 games in Monterrey, Mexico, and Mexico City. So we've been spread thin. We couldn't do it without our private partnership and public partnership in our state. This hopefully can show that DHS, with CBP, with ICE, with TSA, with the FBI, we can work together and have a good working relationship when we're looking all together for enforcing laws and making sure that we're safe. So when we're working in New Jersey or we're working in New York or we're working in Seattle or we're working in LA, we're working flawlessly together. And hopefully we can do that to enforce other nations' laws too, because we've had no serious major incident. Now, there's a lot of fans that go around. Things happen. But there's been no serious issue. We've had some threats come up. We've been able to knock it down because of our relationship with FBI plus ICE, which has HSI, which can investigate, go make the arrest. So we've had a great fan experience. We've got great rapport back from our fan base. Even in the fan zones that they have set up for the fans to experience the games that can't get in, we've had a great time. We do have a tremendous amount of counterfeiting. We're starting to see more human trafficking come in place. Just in Dallas last week, we rescued 4 kids and 1 adult female, arrested over 90 people that was involved in that human trafficking ring. We continue to push on that, but because of our great men, women in uniform, not just in DHS, which we have 80,000 badge officers inside DHS, but because of the state and local police and sheriff departments, we're able to say that we have a safe and secure area to which our fans can experience something. And I'm not a soccer fan. I've never been at a soccer game before until LA in our opening day on the 12th of June. I loved it. It's like becoming a NASCAR fan. Watching it on TV isn't as fun as being there in person. And being there in person was something to experience. And so now I find myself watching it all the time in evenings. I'm even going back through and speeding through games, and it's pretty exciting.
Well, thank you, and again, the men and women that serve with you and our state and local partners for the great job that you're doing.
Congressman, can I use your 30 seconds, 15 seconds of your time
Please.
real quick? I want to, there's been 2 things brought up about deaths inside of detention centers across the United States, right? Across all the detention centers in the United States, there's been 54 deaths, 54, which is 1 too many. I get it. We don't want any deaths, but it's 0.0009%. In the state of Illinois only in the last 12 months, and their 29 facilities, 170 deaths. I just want to again point out the hypocrisy from those that are against our detention centers, which aren't even paying attention to their own backyard in the facilities. And by the way, these numbers aren't unusual to state penitentiaries across these blue states.
And thank you for the job that you do of providing quality health care to those people that are in detention under your watch. Want to switch and talk briefly about the border. I know Representative Cuellar talked a little bit about the importance. Again, thank you for the incredible job that you and your agency have done. The border is as secure as we've seen in our lifetime. We know that on the budget reconciliation bill that there was money for technology, not only wall construction, but technology. I am a huge fan of the autonomous towers that are there placed along the border. I believe that they serve as a force multiplier, that they allow agents to then perform other missions until they are notified of suspected breaches there along the border. I know that there was a first tranche of money that came out. There's scheduled to be a second awarding or second tranche of money for border security technology. Two questions. One is, can you tell me, if you know, Mr. Secretary, an anticipated timeline as to when those awards will be announced? And then the second part, and then I will let you answer and yield back, is as we look at investing in new systems, I would ask that you take into account the input of your rank and file officers who are there. Too many times it seems like that systems have been purchased, not just within DHS, but across the government, that don't necessarily advance the overall mission of the agency. We don't seek the input of those people who are there going to be operating the systems. And so I know I'm about over, but I wanted to give you a chance to answer those two questions before I yield back.
Absolutely. The technology we put in place is technology of today. We don't want technology that we bought last year and it's outdated by the time it gets put in place. So the AI is a game changer. It is a force multiplier. These autonomous towers do allow us to have capabilities that we didn't have in the past, but they've also changed since we first deployed them last year. We're currently going through new testing, new requirements that we see that was holes and laps in the systems, and also greatly taking the input of the individuals that patrol the area and where we need to be paying attention to. Some of those areas just, it doesn't make any sense because they have too much traffic. So when you see it, you don't have time to react. Sometimes it's proximity to a road that we had put it there, and we're not necessarily aware of it because it's not a road that was on our maps, but it's a road that they use or a trail that they use that's well used. Our officers or agents that are on the ground, they know that, and so we're constantly starting to get feedback, having it deployed in better spaces, but changing the technology and then be able to update in real time with the technology, kind of like we do our phone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize for being over time.
As you know, you'll be leaving Congress at the end of the year, and I just have to say it's been a pleasure working with you and your staff, along with our staff. So thank you again for the many years of experience. I'd like to welcome the Secretary again. It was a pleasure talking to you yesterday, and the Deputy Secretary also, Mr. Hager also, and we look forward for your testimony and the dialogue as we start here this morning. You know, there's many issues that we want to talk about, but before I get started, I like to take this time to acknowledge the bravery of a Border Patrol agent, Alex Medellin, who, while he was off duty, he responded to a fatal plane crash in Laredo, Texas. On June 16th, he joined first responders and Good Samaritans to rescue people from the flames of an airplane that crashed there in Laredo. I understand that his bravery is a reflection of the courage and the commitment of those that serve not only Laredo, but all across the nation. But I just wanted to say thank you for that individual, that Border Patrol agent. As I move forward, we certainly want to look at hearings that we've had in the past, and I think it's we know the work that Homeland does. It's critical to the national economic security, safeguarding physical and technological infrastructure and networks, and making sure that we counter the foreign threats. And again, I appreciate all the work, and we understand the way threats have been evolving and the way this committee has been working with your department. Let me start off with the $260 billion from reconciliation. Despite the efforts of the chairman and myself, we try to finalize the funding for all of DHS in fiscal year 2026. We tried, didn't get to that, but we do know that there was a reconciliation that added $260 billion to the department. I'm a big supporter of the department, but I'm a big supporter of Article 1 of the Constitution. And that $260 billion it's more than 4 times that Congress usually allocates to the department in one fiscal year, not including the disaster relief fund. These funds were never considered by the members of this subcommittee, nor did the reconciliation include a single safeguard to keep the funding accountable to the taxpayer. That should concern every member of this appropriations panel. The power of the purse and the duty of oversight are inseparable, not because Congress is entitled to this authority, but because the American people deserve accountability. We attempted during the markup to add additional oversight to the reconciliation through various amendments, but we were not able to do that. We did have a few of those amendments that were put in the chairman's mark, and I certainly want to thank the chairman for adding some of that. A lot of the language that we were trying to add have been there for many, many, many years, but were lost when the Border Patrol and the ICE were removed from the FY26. And I'm a big supporter of ICE, of Border Patrol, but I want to see those safeguards. And they've been common sense measures like reporting deaths in federal custodies, minimum standards for detention contracts, partnership agreements, and certainly protections, as we talked yesterday about the Riverland in my district. I do want to say that I am thankful to the chairman because he did reserve some of those protections in the chairman's mark, and I certainly want to say thank you for that. I believe in strong border security, but it's got to be more than fiscal barriers, especially to the border communities where we've had historical lows. I think the numbers have gone down by 96%, and I congratulate all of y'all. I did not support open borders, and I do not support open borders. But again, we got to have the right measures at the border. And keep in mind, the numbers went down without a single foot of border wall being constructed, without a single foot of border wall constructed. In my opinion, it's something that I've advocated for many years. You got to have repercussions at the border. You can't slap people on their hands and say, come into bienvenidos a los Estados Unidos. You got to have repercussions at the border. And then at the same time, you got to work with our neighbors, Mexico and other countries. And again, numbers went down. I believe that your numbers are at 96% without a single foot of border wall. But again, we got to look at what's important and technology, intelligence, well-trained personnel. I think we have reached almost 21,500 Border Patrol agents, which I support, and I supported funding for our Border Patrol. But we got to include our communities when we talk about border securities. The right policies matter. And as I mentioned, repercussions at the border for anybody that enters the border, the United States illegally, we got to have those repercussions. The reality is the $260 billion that we added, it's going to run out. It's going to run out in 3 years. And when we talk about hiring, the 21,500 Border Patrol agents, and as you know, the reconciliation added 3,000 agents to this, but at the end of this, we got to annualize their salaries. So again, we got a lot of issues that we certainly want to look at, and I look forward to asking some of the questions of Mr. Secretary. It's always a pleasure seeing you again, and the Assistant Secretary. Look forward to working with both of y'all. With that, I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you,
Let's break down a long oversight hearing where members of Congress questioned the Secretary of Homeland Security. It ran across many topics, but underneath them all were two connected questions. What are the real threats the department is supposed to handle? And what is happening with the historic amount of money Congress just gave it? Almost everything in the room came back to those two. Here's the split, and it isn't a simple party line. Members on both sides agreed the country faces serious threats, from cartels to cargo theft to drones. Where they divided was on accountability, whether the department is spending its enormous new budget wisely and transparently, and whether some of its tactics are the right ones. A fair check has to separate the goals, which are shared, from the methods, which are contested. So set the two lenses side by side. The security lens asks whether the department is meeting real concrete threats. The oversight lens asks whether the money is being tracked and the tactics are sound. This breakdown checks each against the record, not the temperature of the exchange. One ground rule. This is a topic where the politics run hot, so we'll keep it narrow and factual. We're checking specific claims against the public record, the funding figures, the programs, and the agencies involved. We're not here to relitigate immigration policy. We're here to see which statements hold up. Start with the number that hung over the entire hearing, because nearly every member mentioned it, the money. Here's the anchor. Through the recent reconciliation law, Congress directed a historic sum toward Homeland Security and the border. Figures cited in the hearing in the range of $260 billion over the coming years. Whatever you think of the policy, the scale is real and unprecedented. That much money is exactly what oversight exists to follow. And this is where a genuinely bipartisan theme emerged, built on the Constitution. Congressman Henry Cuellar and others invoked Article 1, the section that gives Congress the power of the purse. Their point was simple and nonpartisan. Even lawmakers who support the mission have a duty to see the spending plan, because handing over the money is not the same as handing over the oversight. Cuellar was careful to frame it as security and accountability, not one or the other. His position, and it's a common one among border district Democrats, was that he does not favor open borders and does support real enforcement, but that a department cannot get a blank check. Watching where the money goes is the job description of an appropriator, regardless of party. Congressman Ed Case turned that principle into a pointed, specific demand: show us the plan. Case pressed for detailed spend plans, the documents that break a giant lump sum into specific line items. His concerns spanned the whole department, including the cyber agency known as CISA and the Coast Guard. The narrow, checkable point is that when a department receives a historic increase, Congress is entitled to a clear map of where each piece is going, and that map is what he was asking for. So here's the fair read on the money side. There's little dispute that the funding is real and large. The dispute is about transparency, whether the department has shown Congress detailed enough plans for how it's spent. That's a process fight, not a partisan slogan, and process fights are where a lot of taxpayer money is actually protected or wasted. It helps to know what that money actually buys. The reconciliation funding is aimed at things like new border barrier, thousands of additional agents and officers, expanded detention capacity, and new technology. Each of those is a multi-year commitment with contracts and hiring behind it, which is exactly why members wanted to see the schedule, not just the headline total. And there's a reason appropriators guard this so jealously. The power of the purse is the oldest tool Congress has, older than the country's modern agencies, and it's how the legislature keeps any administration accountable. When members from the funding committee ask for a spend plan, they're not obstructing. They're doing the one job the Constitution most clearly assigns them. Now the threats, because this is where the hearing got emotional. Congressman Juan Ciscomani raised the one that quiets a room: children. The issue is real and documented. Government watchdogs have reported that authorities lost reliable contact with a large number of unaccompanied migrant children after they were released to sponsors, raising fears that some could be exploited or trafficked. This is one of the few areas where members of both parties expressed genuine, shared alarm. The Secretary's answer here was the most emotional moment of the day. The honest nuance is that this problem predates any one administration and has stubborn causes. Children are released to sponsors who then move, contact information goes stale, and follow-up is thin. So the fair takeaway isn't a partisan scoreboard. It's that protecting these children is a genuine, ongoing failure of the system that successive administrations have struggled to fix. The mechanics matter here. One agency, at Health and Human Services, places the children with sponsors, while Homeland Security handles the border and enforcement. Kids can fall through the crack between the two, especially if a sponsor isn't fully vetted. Fixing it is less about slogans and more about two big bureaucracies actually sharing information and following up. Congressman Henry Queller, who represents Laredo, brought the border fight down to something concrete, where you actually build. Queller's clash with the Secretary wasn't really about whether to secure the border, it was about the how and the where. Along the Rio Grande, a wall's exact placement runs into levees, floodplains, and private land, and put in the wrong spot, it can be less effective and more expensive. His point, from someone who lives it, is that smart border security is a matter of engineering and local knowledge, not just slogans. He also pushed back on the idea that the cartels are a simple obstacle. A wall alone stops. Smugglers adapt fast, shifting to tunnels, drones, boats, and hiding contraband in the enormous flow of legal trade through the ports. It's why he and others argue that agents, technology, and port inspections matter as much as concrete. The threat is a moving target, and a static answer only goes so far. Congressman John Rutherford, a former sheriff, focused on threats that hit ordinary businesses, organized retail crime, and cargo theft. This one is concrete and rising. Organized crews stealing merchandise from stores and hijacking freight from trucks and trains have grown into a multi-billion-dollar problem, and investigators have linked some of it to cross-border criminal networks. Rutherford tied it to trucking and to the enforcement partnership known as 287 Grige, which lets local police work with federal immigration authorities. On the scale of the theft, he's on solid ground. Cargo theft in particular has exploded in recent years, with criminals increasingly using fake trucking companies and stolen identities to simply drive freight away from rail yards and warehouses. It's a sophisticated, logistics-savvy crime, not smash and grab, and it drives up the price of ordinary goods for everyone. As a former sheriff, Rutherford was speaking from the enforcement end of a genuinely growing problem. And Congressman Shreve pressed a danger most people never think about until it's on the highway next to them, commercial trucks. His concern followed a string of serious highway crashes involving commercial trucks, and focused on how some commercial licenses are issued to drivers who aren't permanent residents, sometimes with thin verification of their records or English proficiency. It's a genuine safety and screening question that sits right at the intersection of transportation and immigration, and it's drawn attention from both parties. There's a specific rule at the center of it. Federal law requires commercial drivers to read and speak enough English to understand road signs and inspections, and enforcement of that rule was relaxed for years and is now being tightened again. Shreve also pointed to a federal verification system called SAVE, meant to confirm immigration status. The narrow point is sound. Safety screening only works if the checks are actually run. Then the hearing jumped to the most futuristic threat in the room, and it's already here: drones. Here's why this one is serious. Cheap drones can be used for smuggling or surveillance, and a newer type flown on a thin fiber optic tether can't be jammed by radio at all. Meanwhile, federal law sharply limits who is even allowed to take a drone down, and local police mostly aren't authorized or trained to do it. So the gap between the threat and the authority to stop it is real and widening. There's a legislative wrinkle that makes it urgent. The limited counter-drone authority the government does have has been running on short-term extensions that keep nearly expiring, which makes it hard to buy equipment or train officers for the long term. So part of the fix isn't more technology. It's Congress giving stable, clear legal authority to use the technology that already exists. Congressman Michael Guest connected all of it to a deadline on the calendar that can't move: the World Cup. This is a concrete, near-term test. The United States is hosting soccer's World Cup across many cities, one of the largest security undertakings the country will face, and it pulls together everything else in the hearing: counter-drone protection, crowd safety, trafficking prevention, and border screening, all at once. Guest questions were essentially, is the department actually ready for it? A fair question with a hard deadline. Guest also asked about border towers, the network of camera and sensor towers meant to watch remote stretches of the line so agents don't have to. They're often sold as the smart, cheaper complement to physical barrier. The fair note is that the technology has had a bumpy history of delays and cost overruns, so members are right to ask whether the new money will finally make it work as promised. Underneath the threats ran a quieter debate about methods, and Congressman Dan Newhouse pressed the one that touches the economy: the workers. Newhouse, from farm country, pushed on backlogs in the seasonal agricultural worker program known as H-2A, where slow processing can leave crops without the hands to pick them. He tied it to whether the immigration agency is modernizing and automating fast enough. It's a reminder that Homeland Security isn't only enforcement, It's also the unglamorous machinery that lets legal workers and legitimate trade move on time. He also raised cyber readiness, and that points to a real tension inside the department. The cyber agency CISA defends power grids, water systems, and elections from digital attack, and it has faced staffing cuts and mission fights even as the threats grow. A department focused on the physical border still has to guard the digital one, and members from both parties worry that side is under-resourced. The H-2A backlog deserves a plain number in mind. American farms depend on hundreds of thousands of these seasonal workers each year, and crops that aren't picked in a narrow window simply rot in a field. So a processing delay isn't red tape in the abstract. It's a real economic loss for growers and higher prices at the grocery store. That's why a farm country Republican was pressing an immigration agency to move faster, not slower. And the Enforcement Partnership Program, 287G, is a genuine two-sided debate worth stating fairly. Supporters say deputizing local police to help enforce immigration law multiplies the department's reach. Critics say it can erode the trust that makes victims and witnesses willing to talk to police at all. Both effects are real, and where you land depends on which one you weigh more. Congressman Shreve also raised foreign trade zones and delays at the ports run by Customs and Border Protection, a reminder that the same agency guarding the border also has to keep legitimate trade flowing. Slow inspections cost businesses real money, and a smuggler benefits from an overwhelmed port as much as from an open field. Security and commerce at the border are the same problem seen from two sides. One more honest thread ran under the whole hearing: capacity. Even with historic funding, a department can only hire, train, and deploy people so fast, and much of the money is a promise that takes years to become agents in the field or towers on the line. So some of the impatience in the room was really about timing, the gap between money approved today and results that only show up much later. So let's total it up, honestly, across the whole hearing. On the threats, missing children, cartel activity, cargo theft, commercial truck safety, drones, and a looming World Cup are all real and largely bipartisan concerns. On the oversight, the funding is genuinely historic, and the demand for detailed spend plans and sound methods is a legitimate constitutional check, not a partisan stunt. Both halves are true. None of this tells you how to vote. You can want an aggressive response to cartels and drones, and also want Congress to see exactly how $250 billion is spent. Those aren't opposites. The mistake is treating the hearing as a pure partisan brawl, when much of it was actually agreement on the danger and a fight over the accounting. Give each side its due. The Security First members are right that the threats are concrete, and the clock on things like the World Cup is real. The Oversight First members are right that a historic budget demands a detailed plan and that some methods carry real trade-offs. A viewer who holds both understands this hearing better than one who only hears a team cheer. And notice how much was actually shared. Protecting unaccompanied children, stopping cargo theft, closing the counter-drone gap, and getting ready for the World Cup drew agreement across the aisle. The honest story of this hearing isn't red versus blue, it's a broad agreement on the dangers, tangled up with a real and healthy argument about money and methods. It's worth resisting the easy cynicism that oversight is just theater. The dull work of demanding spend plans, extending counter-drone authority, and forcing two agencies to share data on children doesn't trend online, but it's exactly the kind of thing that decides whether historic funding turns into real security or quietly leaks away. The boring parts of this hearing were the important parts. So where does it leave us? With a department facing genuine concrete threats and holding a historic amount of money that Congress has every right to track dollar by dollar. A serious country can chase the threats and account for the spending at the same time, and this hearing is a good argument for why it has to do both. Watch three things from here, and the first is the plan. Whether the department delivers detailed spend plans for that historic funding, or whether the money moves while the paperwork lags. That single document is how taxpayers find out if the dollars match the promises. Second, the deadline. Whether the country is genuinely ready to secure the World Cup, especially against drones, when the whole world arrives. That's a hard test with a fixed date, and it will show whether the readiness was real or just reassuring words. And third, the children. Whether the department and its partners actually improve how they track and protect unaccompanied minors, or whether the next watchdog report reads just like the last one. That's the human test underneath all the budget lines. Those answers will come on the record. The threats won't shrink because a hearing ran hot and no dollar accounts for itself. The work is in the spend plans, the readiness, and the follow-through, and that's where we'll keep watching. That is our breakdown. Stay with us.